even in my own home, my own hometown, the two masajid in my own hometown, they've closed their doors on me. And so my scholarship is available to you. I struggle and I struggle and I struggle in my old age to be able to explain what is happening in this changing world, particularly now with the virus. And I want to turn now to the virus and the economy. You have other scholars, Maulanas and Muftis and Shuyukh who closed the doors of the masjid to me. Let them also explain the virus and the economy. I said to you last week that this virus appears to be not only a manufactured virus, but one that is going to remain with the world perhaps for a few years. And among the things that this virus will do, the damage that it will do, this manufactured virus, is to destroy the economy. Only the rich can survive the economy. Only the rich can remain afloat. The rest of us are going to be sinking. I am saying this to you because you're going to be losing your jobs. Don't be surprised when you lose your job. Don't be surprised when you lose your means of livelihood, because this is being deliberately done. But our governments do not have the capacity to think, none of them. And even if they have the capacity to think, they are afraid to act on the basis of truth. So this is governments around the world. So we are moving now to a new slavery. That's what. The virus is taking us to a new slavery. Paper money prepared the way for it. The banking system prepared the way to it. And now the cream on the cake is the virus. Our Prophet ﷺ warned us about that slavery when he said, among the signs of the last day, he said, a slave woman will give birth to her mistress. And I have explained this prophecy several times. Go through my lectures and you see them, and also in my books. But we are required to observe and understand what's happening in the world. This is a form of economic warfare. We are accustomed to economic warfare. There's something called economic sanctions. And economic sanctions is a form of economic warfare. And to add insult to injury, after having imposed economic sanctions on a country, you now send the virus to kill them out. They don't have the means to be able to import medicine. They don't have the means to import supplies that they need to fight the virus, equipment and so on. And so, what is the Islamic view on sanctions? Our Prophet, and nobody teaches this subject incidentally. Nobody taught this subject to me in all my life, nobody, even though I studied economics at 2 universities. Our Prophet ﷺ gave us a free and a fair market. A man came to the Prophet and said, O Messenger of Allah, prices are too high. Please impose price control. He said, no. We are accustomed, once the Prophet has said no, it's no. You're not going to go back to him. But the man went back a second time and a third time and said, O Messenger of Allah, prices are too high. Please control prices, impose price control. He said, no. He said, but we can pray to Allah to bring down prices, meaning prices are determined not by Washington, not by a cartel, no, not by London inner city. Prices are determined by demand and supply. When demand increases and supply is inadequate, prices will rise. When supply increases and demand is not that great, there is a surplus of supply, then prices will fall. And so prices fall and rise based on demand and supply, and the astute businessman is the one who is able to take goods from a market where there's a surplus and bring it to a market where there's a scarcity. This is the astute businessman, and so he makes a profit. But we cannot intervene in the market to control prices or to unilaterally change prices. The Prophet said no. And so it is the market which determines prices. And therefore, from this we know that our Prophet ﷺ has left to the world the concept of a free and a fair market. And therefore it has to be a level playing field. A Hindu cannot enter a market controlled by Muslims with a disadvantage because he's a Hindu. No. Whether you are Hindu or Christian or Jew or Muslim, you enter the market without any advantage over others. If the Hindu is an honest businessman, and if his goods are good goods and they're selling at a fair price, you can buy from the Hindu rather than from your Muslim brother. That's right. There is no religious affiliations in the market, not for buying and selling. You buy and sell based on a free and a fair market. We never also impose any sanctions. We never use business as warfare, to wage war. Not the religion which came from Allah. This is something shameful. This is something disgraceful. This cannot come from a people who worship the one God. To use trade and business as warfare, you have to be a disciple of Satan, a satanic people, to impose economic sanctions on people. You have to be a shameless people to impose economic sanctions. And that's what the United States of America has been doing, leading the world. Economic sanctions here and there and everywhere. Wait until Allah destroys you. What is remarkable is that the virus has created such a condition around the world now where the governments are struggling how to cope with the virus because of all the different things they have to import, and they don't have the means to do it. Sometimes they're stopped by sanctions. So a resolution came before the United Nations General Assembly last week, calling up, it's a non-binding resolution, calling upon the world to remove all economic sanctions during this time of the virus as a humanitarian gesture, so that governments would not face obstacles in dealing with the virus. The vote went before the entire community represented in the United Nations organization, and 169 countries voted in favor of the resolution. I normally don't pay attention to the United Nations organization. It's not important to me, but on this occasion, it was remarkable to me that 169 countries around the world voted in favor of the resolution, and 2 voted against. 2 of them voted against. Who were the 2? The United States of America and Israel. Shame. Shame on the United States of America. Shame on Israel. All of mankind, everybody, the whole world reject you, both of you. Well then, how do we understand that even though 169 countries voted against the resolution, And only two, the United States of America and Israel, voted in favor of continuing economic sanctions. How do we explain that even though this is so transparently shameless on their part, despite this recognition of continuing oppression led by the United States and Israel, how do we explain that we still have American lapdogs amongst us? A political party here in my own native country of Trinidad and Tobago, a lapdog of U.S. imperialism. And everybody could see it plain as daylight. And yet so many went and dipped their finger in support of that political party, a lapdog of U.S. imperialism, imposing sanctions on Venezuela that is suffering, a Venezuela that is suffering and suffering and suffering, and people are refugees. So many refugees here in Trinidad. And yet they went and dipped their finger on Judgment Day. They should be raised with that stain on their fingers on Judgment Day to answer for it. Why? Why is it, we ask in the little time that we have left, why is it that so many cannot see? Why is it they have eyes and yet cannot see? When we can see, we may be a handful and they might be the huge numbers. But what is it that explains this blindness? How is it that there are so many amongst us today who put an American visa, this is more important to them than being faithful to the truth? It is more important to them to be able to travel to the United States than to be faithful to the truth. It is more important to them to be politically correct so that they have freedom to travel than to be faithful to the truth. What is it that explains this blindness amongst people today? And that takes me to Dajjal. That takes me to Dajjal.